Donald J. Trump, 45th President of the United States. Welcome or welcome back to another edition of Undercover Lies, the site that exposes Donald J. Trump for what he really is, an authoritarian dictator wannabe who sold us all out for his own gains. We're diving deep into Donald J. Trump's final chief of staff, the corruption that is Mark Meadows. But first, in this edition's Week of Woe, we talk about Sheila Craighead, Donald J. Trump's official photographer. Also, Donald J. Trump Jr. testifies voluntarily before the January 6th committee. And finally, a quick look at the Ukrainians dealing out not today tablets to Putin's troops. So let's get started. I don't know if you all know or are familiar with Sheila Craighead. Well, she was Trump's official photographer while he was in office. She scored a book deal for a picture book of Trump's time in office. She went to Trump to ask him to write the foreword, but you know the grifter Trump couldn't be nice and just tell her what great work she did or something like that. No, he asks her for a substantial portion of her upfront money. Then when she balked, he stole her idea and made his own picture book of his time in office, and they reportedly sell for over $200. The ex-grifter-in-chief strikes again. Next, it appears that Donald Jr. has turned himself into the police and voluntarily agreed to testify before the January 6th committee. This is the third in the Trump family who would have testified before that committee. Ivanka and Jared testified before the committee last week, as we at Undercover Lies reported, and apparently they didn't take the Fifth Amendment as many before them have done. And to have even agreed to testify voluntarily must really irk and scare Donald Trump Sr. Let's hope he slams his daddy for all the hugs he didn't get.
And when we do, we can not only keep making America great again, but we can make liberals cry again. Get out there and do it, Wisconsin. Get out there and do it. Thank you, guys.
Poor little guy still can't get a hug from Papa Bear. All the hate, all the slaps in the face, and still no affection.
Revenge is best served cold. Finally, in this edition's Week of Woe, the Ukrainians have apparently uncovered a mass grave of Russian soldiers that total over 7,000 dead. And they're all thrown together in one mass grave. Sheesh, talk about not giving a damn about your troops. Well, as we all at Undercover Lies have been saying, only a dictator can treat his troops in this fashion, in this unregrettable fashion, and get away with it. With losses totaling over 15,000 Russian soldiers that have been killed in 5 weeks of fighting in Ukraine, we hope that Putin will finally meet his justified end. We can only hope. Well, folks, that's it for this edition's Week of Woe. Join us again next week for another edition. In the meantime, let's delve into the crazy mind of Mark Meadows. Well, folks, I don't know of anything good that can be said about Mark Meadows, except that some journalists have been calling him the worst chief of staff in American history, serving the worst president in American history. A nice little package. We at Undercover Lies agree with that assessment. Meadows, as chief of staff to the President of the United States, should have been trying to quell the January 6th insurrection, but instead he was one of the perpetrators of that violent day. Meadows has not faced any kind of justice except to be charged with contempt from the January 6th Commission for not appearing before it as they had requested. We'll see how this comes out, but probably it will not be good for the United States. A little background on this guy. Meadows was born July 28, 1959 in North Carolina, and it seems he has just gone downhill from there. He served as Donald Trump's fourth White House Chief of Staff. He resigned from Congress on March 31, 2020 to take that job. Why someone would leave an almost respectable job as congressman to work for the grifter-in-chief, I'll never know. I guess crooks and traitors gravitate toward each other, and shit sticks to Trump. So, Meadows was a card-carrying member of the Tea Party, so he's been lunatic for a while, and it seems he'll continue down that road because working for that orange-faced baboon in office, you'd have to be completely crazy, in the vein of Congresspersons Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Black, or Green, or whatever, who have been California crazy forever. No offense, California, but you know it's true. Crazy is a California virtue, is it not? Meadows was serving as a North Carolina representative of the Republican Party from 2013 to 2020. When Trump was elected, Meadows was a staunch supporter of Trump's, and Trump had been shuffling White House chiefs of staff. Meadows was the fourth one of the three prior disgraced White House chiefs of staff, and under the Trump administration, he tried to succeed where the three others had failed before him. Unfortunately for Meadows, the China virus, or COVID-19 as it is known, was raging throughout the United States and the world at large, so he had his work cut out for him. Because his boss, Trump, had already screwed up in his lackadaisical approach to the pandemic, trying to pass on his stupid and deadly advice to the American people. Trump, at this point in early 2020, was giving the American people his unqualified advice on how to beat COVID. Such crazy, idiotic tidbits as using bleach inside the body to kill COVID.
The virus reacts to different temperatures, climates, and surfaces. The findings confirm that the virus survives better in colder and drier environments and does less well in warmer and more humid environments. And then I see the disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number on the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that.
Let's go live to our US correspondent Cordelia Lynch in Washington. There have been more than raised eyebrows at these remarks from the president. Cordy?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, all I can summarise the response really to this is incredulity, condemnation, consternation. No one could quite believe that these were the words coming out of the mouth of the president. Time and again, he has said, I am not a scientist, and then gone on to make these almost declarative remarks about possible cures, possible solutions to this virus, which he is so desperate to reach. But many of the scientists and the medical professionals last night when they saw this said this is the very worst thing that you could do to your body, certainly in terms of disinfectant and ingesting it in any way.
And other tidbits of idiotic information that finally they asked him to stop giving daily briefings on how the feds are fighting COVID because of his idiotic suggestions and the lethargic response he had to the rapidly progressing virus. Trump, as we all know now, was not up to the task and was very undisciplined. So Meadows had to manage Trump and the rapidly developing pandemic. Referring to the pandemic and Trump's response to it, author Chris Whipple, author of The Gatekeepers, How the White House Chiefs of Staff Define Every Presidency, stated, one of the principal reasons we are in this mess is because Trump has never had a chief of staff who would tell him the hard truths. In other words, the three prior chiefs of staff were basically yes men to Trump's maniacal wishes, without interjecting any useful suggestions on how to beat COVID, and Meadows continued the I know nothing, I see nothing, I hear nothing mantra that the prior three chiefs of staff had, and continues to carry on that mantra as well. Meadows' job expanded after Trump lost the presidential election in November of 2020 to that of conspirator to Trump's attempt at a coup, and appears to have been coordinating the coup attempt as he was receiving phone calls from several other conspirators on January 6, 2021. Such people as Donald Trump Jr. and Ginny Thomas, wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, telling him to be patient. It takes time for the army to organize and to attempt anything and everything possible to overturn the 2020 election and to keep Trump illegally in office. As I said before, as White House Chief of Staff, Meadows should have been doing everything in his power to quell the insurrection and keep his oath of office to defend the Constitution. But he was instead neck deep in the conspiracy to overthrow the election and keep Biden from taking the office he had beat Trump to take, the presidency of the United States. So the loser Trump lost again. When it really mattered, thank God he lost. If Trump had succeeded in overturning the free and most secure election in American history, as his IT professional Chris Krebs said, we Americans would be under a Trump dictatorship, wherein he would retaliate on anyone who he thought happened to oppose his will to overturn our democracy, and by making him and his family rich, while we Americans would be under his thumb. His own Department of Justice head, William Barr, told Trump that there was no fraud in the 2020 election. His own IT professional, Chris Krebs, told him that there was no fraud, that this was the most secure election in American history. But Trump did not listen to either one of them. He fired both of them and came out spouting his lies. So no matter what Trump says, no matter what he does, no matter what lies he comes up with, this was a very secure election. One of the most secure elections in American history. Thank God they failed in their attempt at a coup and keeping that crazy orange-faced traitor in office. No thanks to Chief of Staff Mark Meadow, the worst Chief of Staff in American history, according to some. Well, that's all the time we have for today, guys. Please join us again next week for another edition of Undercover Lies, where we expose Trump's attempt to become dictator of America and the breaking of his oath of office. In the meantime, click on the like button and please subscribe if you like what you hear. Leave a comment if you wish, and remember, America needs your vote.